met Jason Bateman when we were doing a movie together. He was acting, wasn't directing. And we just got along really well. He really liked the way the movie looked and he loved it. And, you know, the cinematographer that shot the pilot and we all sort of got together and came up with a look and a concept for the show. And that's something that sort of developed over the 3 seasons.
Money, that which separates the haves from the have-nots.
We moved here to start over. And it's been hard.
If we had just kept our heads down, Wendy.
There's nothing we can do about that now. We're committed.
Oh, yeah?
We have made promises to our shareholders.
Throughout the series, we've been sort of tending to use wider lenses, closer to create an intimacy with the characters, to really feel like you're a character in the room. I sort of feel like that's a close representation to human view. I mean, we sort of have all of this peripheral vision that surrounds us that's almost fisheye or something. But, you know, really the area that we're focused on, I think, is very similar to that sort of 27, 32 millimeter range. I want the audience to feel like they're in the room. But, you know, when we switched to the Sony VENICE this year, and we started using, you know, full frame, essentially that creates a wider field of view. So your 50 millimeter is closer to your 35. You can also do kind of a wider shot because of that full frame and still have the character popping forward. There's something kind of magical that happens on that bigger sensor where it kind of brings the actor forward into the frame. I mean, I really embraced the shallowness this year. I basically put on, you know, not only did we switch to full frame, but I also used a rehoused 50 millimeter Noctilux, which is, you know, a 0.95 lens. So, you know, for me, it's a way to isolate characters. So I was using it as a storytelling technique to further separate Marty from Wendy so that these people all really feel like they're in their own world and they're all alone. We don't tend to shoot a bunch of coverage and then figure it out later. It's really like, you know, and if you watch a show, in particular in season 1 and beginning of season 2, you know, we would do whole days where, you know, we would shoot like 6 scenes and every scene would be a oneer, you know, like would be one take. So there's a scene in episode 6 where, you know, Julia Garner is trying to convince somebody to lose money gambling in the new casino that they've opened. And, you know, the director, Ben Semenoff, and who's also our camera operator, and myself really wanted to do this whole scene as one shot. And that's the beauty of the casino set, is that I sort of lit it to, you know, be able to do these really long oneers in it. And that, you know, it's basically the whole set is on a dimmer board. You know, it's all LED. So I'm constantly changing whenever I'm shooting in there to keep the contrast look of the show, because it's a casino, so everything is lit everywhere all the time. But, you know, to keep the contrast ratios of the show, I basically, whenever the camera is moving, I'm turning off all the lights that are behind the camera to keep the shadow side towards the camera. So Julia and this other character start at one end of the casino, travel through the casino all the way to the other end. And then another character shows up who says that he owes, you know, that she owes him money. You know, they sort of get into it and they come back to close to the original end of the casino. And it was something that would have been done on a Steadicam, but it's sort of going through a casino with all of these tables and everything. So we had to do it on a crane. So it's this very sort of like beautiful dance with the camera and the actors. And I think it really works. And I think it's one of those scenes that, you know, there's a different version of it that's all edited up and just might not have the tension that the scene does eventually. The lighting of a traditional casino doesn't fit into the world of the Ozark look. You know, so we really had to figure out, how do we make something that's warm and bright, but still has the ability to have the contrast ratios. But what I'm doing is I'm turning some of them off. I'm choosing which ones are going to be on to sort of create a key and create a dark side. From the beginning, Jason and I were really interested in playing with light and dark, and the idea of like really pushing the envelope in terms of terrifying the audience. There's something about not knowing, you know, when Jason walks down a hallway and disappears into the darkness, like, did he just get kidnapped? You know, if somebody's sitting there, in a scene, and there's really like a splash of light on the wall behind them, but the rest of it is pretty dark. You're wondering is, what is the idea of like what is lurking in the shadows. We wanted to create something that felt like it had imminent threat in every frame. I'm often using a small LED source. I'm using practicals and like a small LED source to sort of like, highlight. So you just see, sort of the edge, of somebody's face, and there's just enough light there to read their expression. We're really working in the golden age of, cinematography. Like you have these amazing tools, really, really fast ISO sensors, where you just can use a tiny light. Like I'm basically using, a lot of the time I'm using a practical and then just a tiny LED source that's hidden, or like one Astera tube, that's dialed down to like 5%. That's often what I'm using to light a scene. And so, yeah, we're not working in a time where I need like a 10K and an 18K to light a scene. I'm literally working with like, a 25 watt, a couple 25 watt bulbs and one little LED. There's often times actually where I walk onto the set and I'm like, wow, this is so dark. Like even with my eye, I'm like, I don't know if there's enough light. And I go back to the monitor and I look and I'm like, wow, there's plenty there. One of the things that I'm doing is I'm actually working in like subtractive photography. So rather than thinking about everything in terms of how I'm going to add light to a scene, I'm thinking about how I'm going to remove light, because the sensors are so powerful that I can actually just use mostly available light and sort of choose where I want to pull the light away from the frame to create some contrast. When I'm shooting a day exterior, I would say 95% of the time I'm not doing any lighting. What I'm doing is I'm using big negative rags, big frames to take away light, big negative fill. Usually I'm using the base ISO and using the internal filters, ND filters, in conjunction with filters in the matte box. I basically want ultimate control over what my T-stop is so that I can control the depth of field. Like the Rialto is a huge reason that we used that, ended up using the Venice, to be honest. There's a feature on the Sony that's on the Venice that's called the Rialto, which is essentially like a sensor and by an umbilical cord it attaches to the camera body. And that's something that we use a lot. I mean, they're, in tight spaces, shooting in a car, and often just to even get the camera like closer to a wall, actually you'd be surprised how much, or a low angle shot, you'd be surprised how much the camera body itself sort of any camera gets in the way of trying to frame something up. But the ability to like shove the sensor so it's, that 2 inches closer to the wall or below looking up without having to dig a hole to put the camera in, you really are just working with something that's essentially a sensor that's attached to the camera. And that's something that we use at least, once or twice a day, every day on Ozark. I only get 3. Wow. I mean, I know, so we're all at home now. We're all stuck at home. Yeah, I think so. 3 movies that I would recommend. I mean, one movie, we've been talking about a little bit here, is I would suggest Clute. Is an amazing thriller from the 70s, beautifully shot by Gordon Willis. Another movie that I've always loved is The Seven Samurai by Kurosawa. A movie that I saw recently that I think is one of my favorite movies is a Korean film called Burning. And I'm going to throw a bonus in there, which is Monos, which is a movie that I saw recently, which I think is absolutely incredible. I mean, the thing that I really do to keep myself creatively engaged at all times, and not just, when we're all sort of stuck at home in lockdown, is still photography. I think that, there's so much out there that influences me in terms of light and shadow and sort of experimentation that I get to do while I don't have, 20 trucks lining a block and, a couple hundred people looking at me wondering, where they should put their stuff so that they, we can set up the shot. It's really freeing, and it's a great time to sort of explore looks and things that I'm interested in, and sort of dive into visual language. And it doesn't mean you have to stop. I think it's a way to it's a time to search for more inspiration and think about things that you might want to try, on your next project.